proceeds to secondary school, where they will spend the next 4 to 5 years or even 6. So it's a very important time in their lives. So if you notice, actually PSLE is a useful checkpoint at the end of primary school to help students, parents, and teachers understand where each student's academic strengths lie. It provides information on a student's understanding of key concepts and academic strengths. This in turn guides the student to suitable subject levels in secondary school, one that best suits their learning needs. In this way, students can learn and progress at a comfortable pace. The PSLE result, therefore, also is something that is a fair and transparent way to determine secondary school posting. We acknowledge that the PSLE is unable to assess many other areas that are also important for work and life. Hence, the new scoring system aims to reduce excessive focus on academic results and is complemented by the direct school admission for secondary school, or DSA SEC, as an alternative admission pathway. And you will notice that in many of our secondary schools now, we have applied learning and learning for life programs. Schools have their own distinctive programs which provide opportunities for students to apply skills and knowledge that they have learned in class in other contexts. So this will allow students to focus on their learning and develop their strengths and abilities rather than comparing themselves to their peers. Excellence in life should not be defined narrowly in terms of academic results. And why is this mentioned? Because if you look at the points 1, 2, 3, they give the rationale for why we have changed the way we look at assessments, both in primary school as well as at PSLE. So how does the PSLE scoring system work? You will notice that there are 8 ALs. The 8 ALs offer a good balance. They reduce the fine differentiation of student examination results and provides for more differentiation to give parents and educators a gauge of a student's progress at the end of primary school and match students to suitable academic programs in secondary schools, namely Express, Normal Acad, Normal Technical. Normal Acad and Normal Technical are also usually referred to as NA and NT. Okay, so you will also notice that the range is slightly different. At the top end of the range, all the top ALs have a narrower range, as the PSLE is designed to show what students can do. On average, slightly below half of the students score AL4 or better for standard subjects. So this avoids too many students achieving the same PSLE score and requiring more tie-breaking to determine secondary school postings. I'll be talking about tie-breaking later on in my presentation. When it comes to foundation subjects, they have a double naming system in a way. They are known as ABC, but ALA is mapped to AL6 with a standard level raw mark range of 45 to 64. That's for standard. And it takes into account a student's readiness for that subject at normal academic level. Okay. And students who are likely to score AL6 or better, we actually try to encourage them to offer standard subjects, okay? So that whether they are ultimately going to be posted to Express or Normal Acad curriculum, they are in a better state. Similar to the PSLE T-score system, this mapping is based on the learning and assessment load of the subjects and informs students of how ready they are for the curriculum in secondary school. So this is the difference between the standard scoring and the foundation scoring. So what does it mean, or what will you see when your child receives his or her PSLE certificate at the end of the year? The ALs of the 4 subjects are added to form the PSLE score. The PSLE score replaces the T-score aggregate. It ranges from 4 to 32, with 4 being the best. This PSLE score will determine which secondary school course your child is placed in and will guide them in shortlisting their secondary schools. When it comes to higher mother tongue, the eligibility criteria for higher mother tongue still ensures that students who pursue higher mother tongue can cope with the demands of all subjects taken. So we do take into consideration how they are coping with their English subjects as well. The criteria are set at fixed PSLE scores, as you can see in the table, so that parents and students have a clear gauge on whether they can take higher mother tongue in secondary school. If a student develops interest in mother tongue later on during secondary schools will still have that flexibility to allow such students to take higher mother tongue if they are able to cope with the additional academic load. So we must acknowledge that offering higher mother tongue would require more work from our children. When it comes to the mother tongue language B curriculum, it was actually designed to help students in the express and normal acad courses who face exceptional difficulty coping with mother tongue language despite putting in reasonable effort to continue learning mother tongue language at an appropriate pace. The eligibility criteria for MTLB, as its short form, under the AL system is shown in the table. So you notice that really the scores show that the child is not coping, all right, and actually securing very low marks. Beyond secondary 1, as students progress in secondary school, they can also take up MTLB if they are assessed to be suitable by their respective schools. So, SBB-SEC, which is subject-based spending in secondary school, provides students in the normal acad and normal tech courses greater flexibility to take various subjects at a more demanding level based on their subject-specific strengths. Under the new PSLE scoring system, students posted to NA or NT courses will continue to be eligible to take subjects at a more demanding level at secondary 1 based on their PSLE AL scores for the individual subjects rather than the overall PSLE score. Okay, so while you will see an overall score, you will also see the respective scores for the subjects, and that is what they're referring to. So basically, if your child is able to secure AL5 or better, okay, he can offer the subject at express level, AL6 or better at the NA level, depending on the course that they are being posted to. As students grow and develop in secondary school, they will continue to have opportunities to take subjects at a more demanding level in secondary 2 and 3 to further pursue their strengths and interests and develop to their fullest potential. Similarly, similar to the T-score system, students from the express course will take all subjects at the express level, regardless of their individual subject grade at PSLE. So this provision to offer subjects at a higher level is actually meant for those in the normal streams. With subject-based banding in secondary school, students will be able to take selected subjects at a more demanding level. So this is an illustration. So students in the NANT courses, like the example shown in the slide, is eligible to take English language, math, science, and/or mother tongue language at the express level if they score AL5 or better in a standard level subject at the PSLE. They can take the subject at the NA level if they score AL6 or better at standard level, or ALA at the foundation level in that subject at the PSLE. Okay, so in a way, you will see more differentiation in secondary school for your child based on his or her strengths. So MOE is actually expanding the subject-based spending to full subject-based spending as part of MOE's ongoing efforts to nurture the joy of learning and develop multiple pathways to cater to the different strengths and interests of our students. It is being implemented in a total of 59 secondary schools in 2022 and is being rolled out to more secondary schools each year until 2024, when every secondary school will offer full SBB. So, what does it mean actually? With full SBB, we will move towards a secondary school education where students learn each subject at the level that best caters to their overall strengths, interests, and learning needs. Full SBB will also change the way that schools organize form classes and present more opportunities for students to interact with their peers and develop their strengths, interests, and abilities. What does this entail? Removal of Express, NA, and NT courses. From 2024, the Express, Normal Acad, and Normal Technical courses will be removed. Students can take a range of subjects at 3 levels, G1, G2, G3. G stands for General, based on their abilities. Reorganization of form classes into mixed form classes. This will present more opportunities for students to interact with peers of different subject combinations, strengths, and interests. Common curriculum subjects. Students in mixed form classes will take a set of the following subjects at a common level, amounting to about 1/3 of the curriculum time at the lower secondary level. So art, character and citizenship education, design and technology, food and consumer education, music, and physical education or PE are the subjects. Offering subjects at a more demanding level means students are currently able to offer English language, math, science, and mother tongue language at more demanding levels through SBB SEC today. So students in full SBB schools will be able to offer humanities subjects, meaning geography, history, and literature in English at a more demanding level from secondary 2. The criteria for taking humanities at a more demanding level will be based on students' aptitude for and interest in these subjects at secondary 1. Students will be grouped in different classes for each of these subjects according to the level at which they take each subject, which provides students with a more customized learning experience according to their strengths and interests, and empowers students to take greater ownership of their learning. This provides students with a more customized learning experience according to their subject-specific strengths and interests. Common national examinations. Up to 2026, students will continue to take the GCEO and N-level examinations. From 2027, students will receive a common national certification, which reflects the level at which each subject is taken. The subject levels, G1, G2, and G3, are met from today's NT, NA, and Express standards, respectively. For post-secondary admissions, MOE is also reviewing, and there will be changes which you will be updated in due course. Okay, so this slide shows the timeline of how full SBB will be implemented, and more information can be found at the SBB microsite. There is a link at the top of the slide which you can access at your leisure, because these slides will be posted on our website by next week. So how does Set 1 posting work? Students will continue to be posted to a secondary school based on academic merit and their school choices. This has not changed. Under the new system, we have introduced a new tiebreaker of school choice order, which recognizes the importance that students and parents give to their choice of schools. Tiebreakers will be applied where 2 or more students with exactly the same PSLE score are vying for the last remaining place or places in a school. So how does the tiebreaker work? As you can see, first it's citizenship, followed by choice order of school, and then computerized balloting. Okay. Okay, so I think the first two we understand, but it is actually the second point is actually something that we want to take note of as we make our choices, because the student who placed the school higher in his choice order will get priority. So that means if you have two children, one has chosen a school as first choice, another as second choice, the first student will get the last place possibly. All right. For computerized balloting, rest assured that actually the majority of our students would not have to undergo balloting. This is because balloting only kicks in after the PSLE score and after earlier tiebreakers like citizenship and choice order are exhausted. This means that balloting only takes place between students at the margins who have the same PSLE score, same citizenship, and same school choice order. Okay, so this is an example of who would be eligible to go to the school of choice. Okay, so in the interest of time, and because you can access these slides at your leisure, I will not go through this slide, but if you have questions, you can always email us and we will do our best to explain. All right, PSLE score ranges. Students and parents can use the PSLE score ranges as a starting point and guide to explore school choices. As schools will be less differentiated by cutoff point because the range now is between 4 to 30, there is a good range of secondary schools options available for students at each PSLE score. More importantly, students and parents should take the time to look through what the different schools have to offer when selecting the 6 choices that will best fit the child's educational needs, such as the school's distinctive programs, co-curricular activities, ethos, and cultures. Similar to the T-score system, the school's PSLE score range may vary from year to year. So we cannot take it that a secondary school's PSLE range will not change. Okay. And why does it change? It depends on the cohort's PSLE results and their school choices in the previous year's Sec 1 posting exercise. The PSLE score ranges for individual secondary schools are available on MOE's School Finder and My Skills Future portal links. So the links are also here, or you could also Google the links. So how does it work? The PSLE score ranges reflect the score of the first and last student who will be posted into each school under the AL scoring system based on the previous year's cohort's PSLE results and school choice patterns. So it's actually not that different from the former T-score system. It's just that you notice the numbers are smaller. Students whose PSLE scores are at the cutoff point could be balloted in or out depending on the number of vacancies in the school. So while you can say that, oh, this school offers places at 20 points, it is a slight gamble if your child scores 20 points and is trying for the school. So you must be aware of that. So higher mother tongue for admission into SAP schools. Students who obtain a distinction, merit, or pass in higher Chinese and a PSLE score of 14 or better are eligible for posting advantage to special assistance, plan, or SAP schools. If multiple students with the same PSLE score apply for places in the same SAP school, those with better higher Chinese language grades in order of distinction D, merit M, and pass P will be allocated a place ahead of other students. This applies before the tiebreakers for Sec 1 posting. So again, there's an illustration here which you could read for yourself. So the higher Chinese language grades of the first and the last student admitted into this particular school are reflected in the brackets. D for distinction, M for merit, and P for pass. So this was the range, hypothetical range of a school that admitted children from the last PSLE exams. Okay. If the first or last student did not take HCL or higher Chinese, no higher Chinese grade will be shown. But it means that this particular child has definitely scored or met the cutoff requirement to get into the SAP school. Choosing suitable secondary schools for your child is very important. As I've mentioned earlier, it's a 4 to 6 year stay in that particular school. So we want our children to be happy. The PSLE score ranges for individual secondary schools, therefore, serve as a good reference point for parents and students as you begin considering secondary school choices. To shortlist specific schools, parents and students can refer to the updated information on the PSLE score ranges for individual secondary schools. This you can do so at the individual schools' websites. However, it is important to ensure that the students enjoy their learning journey as far as possible. Parents should not focus on attaining certain scores or getting into certain schools. You are also encouraged to have conversations with your child early to discover their strengths and interests. You can explore schools with the MOE's School Finder website and also schools' websites to learn about the co-curricular activities, distinctive programs that can develop your child in the areas that he or she is passionate about. We also encourage you and your child to visit the school's websites and their open houses to have a better understanding on the school culture and programs that they offer. Your child can also consider direct school admission, DSA, as an alternative admission pathway. The DSA set considers students' diverse talents in areas that are not demonstrated at PSLE, such as in sports, performing arts, and leadership. So, when submitting school choices, you and your child should use all 6 options with a range of cutoff points. Consider at least 2 or 3 schools where your child's PSLE score is better than the school's cutoff point to secure or to successfully secure a place in a secondary school of choice. Consider your child's strengths, interests, and abilities. And hence, it is important to find out more about what the schools offer, such as distinctive programs, subjects, and co-curricular activities, as well as their location and contact information. Okay. The secondary 1 posting exercise will be held in late November after results are released for PSLE candidates. The secondary 1 option form allows you to indicate up to 6 secondary school choices. And there are 2 ways of submitting the Set 1 option form. You can submit the choices via the internet system or complete the option form at in our school, right, during the option phase. So here are some tips that we hope and strongly encourage you to engage your child in, all right, to talk about your child's strengths and interests, to be a sounding board for your child, to affirm him or her for what they are progressing well and doing well in. Okay. So for more information, okay, you can find or access these resources at your leisure. And if you need certain clarification, you can always approach your child's form teacher or myself, and we will do our best to answer your questions. Right. So this is the first part of my presentation. I will now go on to talk about school. So this is our result, all right, from last year. And we are very happy that all our children have managed to be admitted to secondary schools, but we want to always challenge ourselves to do better. This year we had 23 who secured DSA options. As you know, DSA, whether or not a child takes up DSA option is his or her personal choice. But we definitely had more children who took part in the DSA exercise, and some of them decided not to take up the options. Right, and these are the options. So as you notice in my presentation, they do offer a range. They do look at a range of talents and abilities. So moving on to our plans, these are dates that we need to take note of. They will also be sent to you in newsletters, but you might want to earmark these dates or take a photo. All right, you notice the dates are, the actual exams actually happen in August, September, and September into October. How do we prepare your child? You will notice that your child has to stay back on Wednesdays and Thursdays for extra lessons. We also have extra lessons during the holidays. We also provide them practice. The practice papers simulate, if they are not actual PSLE booklets, there's actually a limited range in a way, but we do exchange resources with other schools to provide your children with a sufficient practice. And where a child needs more focused coaching, parallel lessons are actually mounted. So my teachers who are very experienced, they know how to bring out the best in your children. We just need your children to cooperate with our teachers and do the necessary homework. Okay, we also want to bring out the best in every child. So for those with the ability, they are also given extra opportunities to learn new skills through enrichment, through competitions, and we want to recognize our children's good progress, even if it is maybe a 10% improvement and so forth. We want the child to know that he or she can actually make good progress, all right? So we have a little system in place to recognize them. Parent-teacher conference is important, and especially if we alert you that your child is underperforming, all right? Which means that your child has the potential, okay? So we hope that you will keep the appointments, and after the appointments, work with the school to bring out the best in your child, okay? So my teachers tend to expect a lot from your children because they are capable of doing well. So we need your support to send the same message to your child. But Shuqing Primary School is never just about academic studies. We also focus on other areas. Our values are very important. So your children will have gone through this in terms of what integrity means. Best effort is something that we always strive for your child to display. Care, right? As your child grows up, it's actually very important to be able to be a bit more aware of his or her surroundings, the people around him or her, and how he or she can extend this value of care to others. I was saying that adaptability this year is really about prioritizing, okay, their time and energies, and we will help your child to the best of our ability. Respect, your child is learning to have a social media presence, a bit too young actually, but we hope that your child will learn to be mindful of how he or she interacts both online and in face-to-face encounters. And definitely excellence is what we are all striving for, partly the reason of why you are here, and therefore we will continue to work with you to bring out the best in your children. Okay, so we have also shared all these. You can ask your child about it in terms of opportunities. We are mindful that some of them are interested in DSA opportunities. So we try our best to also infuse and provide platforms for them to have some kind of portfolio or record to share during interviews. And these are also programs that are signature to Shuqing, Biscuits, Coding, Stardust. And now we have DSA preparation also to help your child realize his or her dreams. Okay, so this is what we really want to do, bring out the star in your child. They are very familiar with the Apple story. And what we can do is the 4 beings. What do I mean by that? Stability is very important. Even a simple thing as a proper breakfast can make a world of difference. Okay, so please ensure that your child experiences as much stability as possible because he or she might also be going through puberty. We have to signal the right attitude to homework, and while some of you might engage extra help for your children, if your child does not do his or her school homework, my teachers have the right to be a bit upset, okay, because they cannot be looking at other types of homework. So when it comes to school-based assessments, let's take them seriously. We have a total of 4, including PSLE, and they need to ensure that they put in their best effort at each round. Many of them do, so we are very, very encouraged to. Okay, talk to your child, and it's not just about how they did their homework, what's coming up, what tests are coming up, and stuff like that. It's also about showing your child that you truly care for the whole person, okay? And your child will know how to respond accordingly. But handphone usage is also very important, which I will go into greater detail in the next slide. But when we do give you feedback, we hope that you can work with us to work on that feedback. And I unfortunately have had parents in the past who make a lot of excuses and so forth. So it doesn't help the child. The child picks up these signals and therefore may not fully realize his or her potential. Okay, so you know the power and both constructive and destructive of the internet. So this is something you have to manage. Sometimes if our children have not done their best, have not realized their potential, it is because they spend too much time on their handphone or on games and so forth. Okay, so it's a real pity, and that's why some of them do not do as well as they could. All right. Good role modeling, I think you know this is important. Point number 3, I hope is only something that used to happen for some of us when we were children. Comparing your child with another child never works, even if that other child is the child's twin, the child's sister, brother. So it doesn't work because every child is different. Every child is special. Okay. And I do not endorse tuition because I think our teachers do a good job, and your children already have a very long day. But should you feel you need to arrange extra support, understand that you can hold whoever is supporting your child accountable for your child's progress, rather than just happily spending money and spending your child's time on support that doesn't quite work. Okay. I would love for you all to be able to come to school once it's possible. At the moment, even this session is virtual, but where we can, do be there for your child. An important date is actually when he or she receives the PSLE or posting results. And because of that, I hope that together we will have a fruitful year together. All right, bring out the best in your children. Your children are also going through a lot. Okay, the prospect of not seeing their friends after this year can be something that can also upset them. So let's see how we can get to know your children so that we can support them better. Okay, where direct school admission is concerned, this is what we have in terms of your child needs to have a portfolio. It's not just interest, but a portfolio of achievements. Okay, and what we actually do closer to the June holidays is to host a series of sessions for your children, where if your child is interested, has the necessary prerequisites, we will do our best to prepare your child for interview, whether it is online or face-to-face. We have to see how the COVID situation pans out this year. But what we find not so helpful for your children is that sometimes when we ask them, why do you want to go to a particular school? The child says, my mommy wants me to go there. Your mommy is not going to that secondary school for the next 4 or 5 years. So we do have to take the child's interest into consideration. Okay, so basically, we need to work together. We need to know what's happening. Sometimes you will receive information from your school of choice. And if the school is expected, as it has been for the past 2 years, to arrange all the online interviews and so forth, you need to keep us informed, okay, so that we can support your child appropriately. So my last slide before I pass the time to my heads, I will read it out because it's so meaningful. Together, may we give our children the roots to grow and the wings to fly. We can do it, right? Your children are blessings to all of us. Let's bring out the best in all of them.
Thank you, Mrs. D'Souza. And sorry once again for the little hiccup. We shall now invite our respective heads of departments to share the demands of the subject at PSLE. So we will have our English, mathematics, science, and then finally our mother tongue HODs. So we shall now invite Sarah Fong, Miss Sarah Fong, to come on to share the presentation on the English language. Ms. Fong?
Okay, welcome parents. Good morning. Welcome to the sharing on English language. I'm going to share with you the requirements for the subject. Actually, even before this year, your child would have gone through 1 year of the curriculum at P5. So whatever that I'm sharing here shouldn't be new to you, but it will be good to take note of certain things that I'm going to highlight. Okay, firstly, this is the requirements for the standard English paper. There will be 4 papers, starting with paper 1, the writing paper, which comprises 2 types of writing. Firstly, situational writing, and secondly, continuous writing, which we also commonly call it as composition. A second paper will be language use and comprehension, the one where you have booklet A and booklet B, followed by the listening comprehension paper with 20 MCQ to complete. And last but not least, oral communication, which includes reading aloud and stimulus-based conversation. And the requirements for the different components are also taught in class. Okay, next, the foundation English format, which is also the same as standard English, just that it differs in terms of the number of questions, but sometimes the marks for the whole paper will be the same. So you have your paper 1 again, paper 2, paper 3, which is LC, and paper 4, oral. So I shall now go through the requirements for every paper, starting with paper 1, which is writing. For situational writing, which is the first part, for both standard and foundation English, students will be required to write a short functional piece that suits the purpose, audience, and context of a given situation. Examples would be letter, email, and report. So here's an example for situational writing, where the child will be given a task. So in this case, students are taught to be familiar with purpose, why the text is written, audience, who they are writing to, and context, what is the situation in the question. So for this task, the purpose is to inform a cousin about a promotion. And the audience is obviously the cousin, and context should be an informal one because you're writing to your cousin whom you know personally. So this is the mark scheme for situational writing. The first one being task fulfillment. And we're looking at the response that shows understanding of purpose, audience, and context. And the response must also include all the required information, which we call key information. And the next part that we're looking at for situational writing will be the language, organization, and context. So in terms of language, we are looking at accuracy in terms of grammar, expression, spelling, and punctuation. And we are also looking out for ideas that are presented clearly, meaning proper sequencing of ideas. So for standard and foundation, there is a difference in the marks for situational writing. So standard will be 15 marks and foundation 10 marks. The next part, we are still talking about paper 1. It will be continuous writing or composition. So for standard English, the child has to write a composition of at least 150 words based on a given topic. And 3 pictures are given for them to choose, but they have to still keep in mind the topic that is given, and they have to choose at least 1 picture. And students may come up with their own interpretation, how to relate the picture to the topic. And for foundation English, the child has to write a composition of at least 120 words based on a series of pictures. So now let's look at the example for standard English. So over here, the question is to write a composition about an embarrassing situation, and the 3 pictures are provided as shown here. So what do students have to do in relation to the example that was given on the previous slide? They have to interpret the topic correctly, which is an embarrassing situation, which means they also need to understand the meaning of embarrassing and situation. Next, they make use of one or more of the pictures provided to write about the topic. For example, if they choose the picture on someone falling asleep, they may want to write about someone falling asleep in class that was embarrassing. And they also have to include the points provided, and the 2 points are also mentioned in the question. They need to explain the embarrassing situation. After which, with the ideas, to form a proper story, they need to develop the ideas. And also to use appropriate words and phrases effectively. This is the example for Foundation English. So students have to do the following: interpret the situation correctly, include ideas and helping words provided with the pictures to develop the ideas, and also to suggest an ending. And to make the story interesting, they should use appropriate words and phrases effectively. So this is the mark scheme for continuous writing. So in terms of contents, we're looking at whether ideas are relevant and developed, and whether there is interest value in the story, meaning is the story able to engage the reader effectively and make the reader want to continue to read on. And for language and organization, we are looking at grammar, expression, spelling, punctuation, vocabulary, sequencing of ideas, and paragraphing. So again, there is a difference in the marks for standard and foundation. Now I'm moving on to paper 2, language use and comprehension. So for both standard and foundation English, students will be assessed on their ability to use language correctly and to comprehend visual and textual information. So for booklet A, for standard English, there are 4 components as shown here, followed by booklet B, which are all open-ended questions. Next, booklet A for foundation English, and booklet B for foundation. So next, I'm going to show you some examples of how the components will look like. So first is an example on comprehension close. Students have been practicing the following in class, where they read the passage first to understand the context, and after which they need to look out for contextual clues in order to come up with appropriate answers. So after they have filled out all the answers, they should read the passage again to check the answers. Of course, in class, the teachers also try out other strategies to help our students. Next one is on synthesis and transformation with 3 examples provided here. So for each question, they are given 2 sentences. And for the answer, they are given words. Words are provided for them to combine the 2 sentences. And when they put together the 2 sentences, they must ensure there is no change in the meaning. And they also have to make sure that the language, the tenses, punctuation used, and spelling of the words are correct. Comprehension, open-ended, is another example. This is just part of the comprehension passage shown here. They have to answer 10 questions. So again, similar to comprehension close, they have to skim through the text first in order to get a general idea. After that, they read all the questions and form the necessary predictions. And after the first reading, they will do the second reading, where they will scan the text for specific information that answers the questions. So here is an example of an inferential question. What does the word eat in line 10 refer to? Or it can be things like, explain why the lions made for the bush in line 13. So usually the phrase or the sentence will be highlighted for them. So they have to make use of what they have gone through in the first and second reading in order to form an appropriate answer. Okay, I've completed the sharing for paper 2. Now I'm going on to listening comprehension. So for both standard and foundation English, there will be 20 multiple choice questions, which is a total of 20 marks. So listening comprehension is to test their ability to understand spoken English. So they will be listening to audio text that may be in the form of news items, announcements, advertisements, and so on. And for some questions, usually the first few questions, graphic representations will be used. Next, paper 4 on oral communication. So for both standard and foundation English, there are 2 parts. The first part being reading aloud, which is 10 marks, which tests students' ability to pronounce and articulate words clearly, and also whether they are able to read fluently with appropriate expression and rhythm. And for part 2, stimulus-based conversation, which is 20 marks, we are testing their ability to giving a personal response to a visual stimulus and whether they are able to engage in a conversation on a relevant topic. This is an example of a stimulus-based conversation stimulus and also the prompts. So you notice that the stimulus is actually a very simple visual stimulus, but the prompts will be asked by the examiner in relation to the picture. These are some examples. The first one, look at the picture. What message does it intend to send? So the child has to respond in relation to what the stimulus shows. Then the second prompt, for example, have you talked to a stranger online? Share with me your experience. So in order to do well for stimulus-based conversation, students will have to tap on their prior experiences in order to be able to share interesting experiences with the examiner. Okay, the common problems faced or common mistakes made by our students would be the following. They are not able to differentiate forms of a verb. For example, the present tense, the past tense, and the past participle of a particular verb, and also the word classes. Example, the verb sit and the noun sit. So in class, we have been preparing them for this, drilling them on the different forms of a verb and also word classes, because it will help them when they attempt components such as closed passages. And students also tend not to check their answers by reading and identifying clues from the text. For example, for grammar clues, before they go on to the next section, they should read through the whole passage, including their answers on the blank, to check that the answers make sense and are appropriate. And sometimes for comprehension open-ended, students have to quote a word, a phrase or an answer that is taken from the passage, but often there are inaccuracies, and sometimes if the question asks for a maybe 4-word phrase, and if the child makes just one error, the child will lose the mark. So they really have to check very carefully when doing such questions. And also for comprehension, they need to be more careful in how sentences are phrased, because they need to make sure that the meaning is correct. The same thing goes for synthesis and transformation questions. And for comprehension answers, they need to be specific, because some students tend to write very long answers hoping that some parts of that long answer will answer the question. But if their answer contains irrelevant information, it is considered as they not having answered the question. So they may still not be able to get the marks. Okay, I'm moving on to how you can help your child to in their learning journey for English. So for reading, do encourage your child to read storybooks, magazines, and newspapers. They need to read a variety of text types. And as they become more independent, encourage them to select books and texts which are more challenging. And as your child reads, definitely he or she will pick up vocabulary. So it would be good for your child to build a list of vocabulary that describes feelings and actions that could also be used for writing. And find opportunities to talk to your child about the books that he or she has been reading so that your child is motivated to continue to read more and share with you. Next, for speaking, listening, and writing, it is important for them to know what is happening around them. So you may want to discuss the latest news with your child, not just what the news is about, but how they feel after listening to the news. And encourage your child to listen to a wide variety of spoken and audio text. So when they listen to the radio or they watch the news on TV, that is also a good way to listen to spoken and audio text. And next, for writing, if you find that your child lacks ideas, even the language is not as strong, it will be good for them to read model conversations and highlight useful words and phrases. And of course, it doesn't just stop there. They have to try and make a conscious effort to use these phrases in their writing. So writing is not just about compositions, but it can also take place in a form of journals. And encourage and provide opportunities for your child to practice writing, regardless of how long your child can write. So you give them like 10 minutes and they have to write as much as they can within the 10 minutes. So if you do that regularly, you will find that your child will become more fluent when it comes to writing. So I've shared some strategies on what you can do to support your child in the learning of English, but we are also aware and know that language skills cannot be learned overnight, which means it has long started even before primary school. And maybe from your personal experience as students, you also know that in order to be better in the language, you need to read a lot so that you can build your base of vocabulary and language in order to be able to have ideas to write about and to talk about. So I hope that your child will put in effort to practice language skills on a regular basis. So thank you. I've come to the end of my presentation. For further queries, you may always consult your child's EL teacher or email me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Fong. Good morning, parents. I'm Mr. Billy. I'm going to share with you the subject requirements for PSLE Mathematics. This outline of my sharing. I will start by sharing PSLE Mathematics topics and format, and then I will share the curriculum framework for primary mathematics. I will continue with the different types of PSLE questions and a few examples of the recent PSLE question. And then I will continue with some of the tips, how the students can do well in mathematics paper. All right, this is the topics that will be tested in both standard mathematics and foundation mathematics. These are the chapters, the concept that the students have learned from primary 1 all the way to primary 6. Okay, and you notice that for standard mathematics, there are slightly more concepts as compared to the foundation. This is the PSLE format for standard mathematics. There are paper 1 and paper 2, which the students will do in separate sitting. Paper 1 consists of multiple choice and short answer questions, mainly 1 mark or 2 marks question, and the duration is 1 hour. While paper 2, the students will be given 1 hour 30 minutes. There are fewer questions, but some of the questions carry 3 marks, 4 or 5 marks. That means there are more steps and more presentation is required. For paper 2, calculators will be allowed, but the students are still expected to show their clear working and equations. Okay, for foundation maths, similarly, there are paper 1 and paper 2, but there are slightly fewer questions. The duration for paper 1 and paper 2 are both 1 hour each. And similarly, for paper 2, the use of calculators is allowed. Now, this is the curriculum framework of Singapore Primary Mathematics. So you notice that the heart of the framework is mathematical problem solving, and there are 5 key aspects. On the bottom left, you will see skills, and then moving counterclockwise, you will see concepts. So skills and concepts are the basic foundation where students need to know how to perform addition, subtraction, multiplication, different concepts of numbers, geometry, data analysis, and so on. Okay, but beyond that, mathematics also requires students to have mathematical processes, metacognition, and attitudes. Now, mathematical processes refer to reasoning, communication, and connection. Okay, so what does it mean? Let me illustrate with a simple example. Okay, this is how mathematical communication is used in the mathematics classroom by the math teachers. So for example, we have this simple question, 2 divided by 1/3, right? The procedure is quite simple. Okay, so 2 times 3 out of 1 equals 6. Okay, but in class, we want the students to have the correct understanding of the concept using the right mathematical language. So in this case, the teacher will ask how many groups of 1/3 are there in 2 holes? The answer is 6. And how do we know? Because through the diagram, to this picture, we can see that yes, in 2 holes, indeed, there are 6 groups of 1/3. Okay. Next, I'm going to share the different types of PSLE mathematics questions. There are 3 tiers, starting from the simpler to the more complex type. First is the recall and perform computation. Basically, the students just need to recall mathematics facts, concepts, rules, formula. The second level is to understand and apply, where students need to interpret information, understand the context, and apply the mathematical concept, usually in the form of word problems. Then the next level is to reason and analyze, where students need to reason mathematically, analyze information, and select the appropriate strategies. Now, these are some of the questions. Okay, I will start by giving example of recall concepts. This is on decimals. In the numbers 43.21, which digit is in the tens place? These students just need to recall concept of place value, and the answer is option 4. Okay. Okay. Another question, also recall type of question. The topic is fractions. Which of the following shows 1/4 of the figure shaded? All right. So students need to recall concept of fraction as equal parts. So a common misconception could be that students choose option 2 because they see 1 part out of 4, but they are not equal parts. So actually the students should identify option 3, where 2 out of 8 equal parts are shaded, which equivalent to 1/4. Okay, this is another type of question where students need to understand and apply concept. Is on geometry, four-sided figure. Okay, PQ and QR form two sides of a trapezium PQRS. PS is parallel to QR. PS is twice the length of QR. Complete the drawing of trapezium PQRS. So students first need to recall the concept of trapezium with one pair of parallel lines, and then identify the two lines, which is PS and QR. And then the students need to draw line PS that is twice as long as QR to complete the drawing. Okay. Now, this is another type of question on data analysis, chart, pie chart, and graph. Students are required to understand, apply concept. Okay, the pie chart shows the number of 4 types of pens sold by a shop last week. Which bar graph best represent the information given in the chart? Okay, so this is a multiple choice question. There are 4 options. First, the students must understand the context given, and there is clue shown in the part B and D with the right angle sign given. So it gives indication, give clues that B and D has equal portion, equal amount. Okay, and that will eliminate option 1. Okay, so among option 2, 3, and 4, the students have to look at portion A and C. Okay, and we can see that A is larger than C. So the correct graph that represent this pie chart is option 3. Okay, next, this example of word problems about understanding applied concept. Okay, Lucy had equal number of gold star and silver star. She gave 26 gold stars and 14 silver stars to Maggie. She gave the remaining stars to Nick. Nick was given 1 gold star for every 3 silver stars. How many stars did Lucy have at first? Okay, so the question asks how many are there at first. So this is one clue to indicate the strategy being used is working backwards. Okay, now what do we know at the end? We know that for every 1 gold star, there are 3 silver stars. So that indicates a ratio of 1 to 3, which can be represented by 1 unit and 3 units. Then we move backwards. What happened before that? Because Lucy gave 26 gold star and 14 silver stars, right? So we have to work backwards and added this amount back. Okay? And another important clue given from the first sentence is that the number of gold star and silver stars are equal. So when we draw the model, okay, the original amount should be the same. And from this model drawing, we can see the relationship that the 2 units, the difference, okay, can be found by taking 26 minus 14. Then from there, we can find 1 unit. Now, since the question asks how many stars did Lucy have at first? So at first, altogether, yeah, consists of 4 units and 26 and 14. And that is the total number of stars at first. So you can see in this question, the use of model drawing will help the students to visualize and find the relationship in the question. Okay, now this is an example of analyzing question. Okay, each of the 3 cards shown is printed with a different whole number. The smallest number is 23. When these numbers are added 2 at a time, the sum are 61, 71, and 86. What is the largest number on the cards? Okay, usually when solving a word problem, the teacher will ask the students to identify keywords do annotation, usually in the form of underlining keywords. So in this case, the students must identify there are 3 cards, and then the smallest is 23. And when these numbers are added 2 at a time, the sum are 61, 71, and 86. That means, okay, there are 3 combinations, and the students must reason mathematically that in order to get 71, the one in the middle, you will need to add the smallest and the greatest number. Since the smallest number is 23, that means the largest number can be obtained by subtracting 23 from 71, okay, to get the answer. So this question requires students to reason and analyze the context. Okay, this is another example of analysis question. The figure is formed by 5 identical semicircles. What is the diameter of each semicircle? Use the calculator value of pi to find the perimeter of the figure. Now, at a glance, it may look like a difficult question, a little bit novel, but if the students are able to identify the concept and the keywords, actually the concept is not that complex. So again, the mathematical keywords here is 5 identical semicircles. What is the diameter? So they must know what is diameter referred to, and then perimeter. What is the meaning of perimeter? All right. So one way to solve this is by looking at the entire length of this figure, okay, from left to right. So it consists of a diameter and 12 diameter, 12 another diameter. Now, another relationship can be formed at the bottom. If you look at from the bottom, okay, there's the same length consists of 22 and diameter 16, the diameter and 22. And if we rearrange the diameters and take it as a unit, we'll see that, okay, these two have the same length. Okay, and okay, if I transfer to this, we can see that the diameter can be obtained, 1 unit can be obtained by taking 22 plus 16 plus 22, subtract 12 and 12. And then we'll get a diameter. So once we get a diameter, actually we can proceed to find the perimeter of the figure. Basically, it's a perimeter of 5 semicircle, okay, which is 5 times half times pi times diameter. And then in order to get the entire perimeter, we have to add the straight line component, which is 60 and 24. Okay, then the students need to round to 2 decimal places. So again, in this example of analysis question, it's very important for students to identify the keywords, the concepts, and then use model drawing or other strategies to help them understand the context. Okay, so with that, how do students do well during examination? As I mentioned, annotation of important information is very critical. For example, by underlining keywords. Okay, and then do not dwell too long on the question. Some question can be a little bit challenging. Skip that question and then return to complete them later on. It is important to try to attempt all questions and show all the maths equation and workings, okay, because there will be marks given for correct steps, correct equation, even though the final answer may be inaccurate. And then students need to familiarize with the function required in calculators, especially for paper 2. And to check the accuracy of the work, for example, number transfer, unit of measurement, calculation. Okay, why is it important? Because there are some common mistakes made by the students. For example, transfer error. The equation is correct, but transfer a wrong number, so inaccuracy happens. Or wrong use of equal sign. For example, Mr. Tan spent 2/5 of his money. He spent $12. Okay, so this 2/5 represent $12, but they are not equal, so cannot use equal sign. So must use either arrow or a dash. Okay. Another incorrect use of equal sign in the equation is to combine two steps into one, like this 20 plus 10 equals 30. It should stop there. Then if we want to continue with another equation, has to write a new equation at the bottom. And then, of course, incorrect use of unit of measurement. Okay, like 1 kilometer supposed to be 1,000 meter. Otherwise, then it will cause inaccuracy in the calculation. Okay, so with that, how parents can support their child in learning of mathematics. So very important is to monitor the completion of the homework. Okay, and please remind them to present his or her work clearly and systematically. Okay? Even when calculators are allowed. And then encourage your child to have a regular revision, reattempt question where correction has been done for the previous mistake, and get the formula right, and then commit certain facts into memory, like for example 0.5 equals to half equals 50%. All this will help them with speed and accuracy, especially for paper 1. And finally, build time management skills. When doing a time practice, get your child to complete the practice within the given time to build the stamina for the rigor of the paper. Yeah, that is the end of my presentation. Thank you. For further queries, you may consult your child's maths teachers. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Mr. Billy. Good morning, parents. I'm Ms. Lau, and I'll be sharing with you the requirements for PSLE Science and PSLE Foundation Science. I'll be taking you through the overview of the primary science syllabus, the assessment objectives, the format of the exam papers, and how you can better support your child's learning at home. Now, in primary school, students learned about the concepts in science, develop their skills and processes, as well as the ethics and attitudes through the inquiry-based learning approach. Now, the primary science syllabus provides students with a foundation of concepts so that they can continue to inquire things and the phenomenon around them, and they will be able to see the relevance of science to their everyday experiences. So over here, you see the 5 themes that are covered from P3 to P6, and these themes are diversity, cycles, systems, energy, and interaction. Now, these themes encompass the big ideas in both the life science and physical sciences. So in the teaching of science, the teachers make conscious efforts to help students see the interconnectedness across the different themes so that they will deepen their conceptual understanding of the things around them. Now, in this table, it shows the topics that the students learned from primary 3 to primary 6, and the themes are taught in a spiral approach where students develop not only concepts, but also skills at greater depth across the levels. Now, you can see that the weighting for the life science and the physical sciences are about 50% each. So it is important that students revise their concepts that are taught in the previous years. Now, in the PSLE Standard Science paper, 40% of the paper comprises knowledge with understanding questions, which requires students to demonstrate their understanding of science concepts and skills. 60% of the paper is made up of application questions, which requires students to apply scientific concepts to new situations. So they should also be able to interpret data and apply the process skills in answering these questions. For foundation science paper, 50% of the paper comprises knowledge with understanding questions, which includes the recall of scientific facts and principles. And the remaining 50% are application questions where students will apply the process skills in new contexts or situations. For PSLE Standard Science paper, it consists of 2 booklets, which the students will take in one sitting. Okay, for booklet A, There are 28 MCQ questions and every question is 2 marks, totaling to 56 marks. This is more than 50% of the paper, and it is important that students do well for booklet A. And for booklet B, there are about 14 structured, there are 12 to 13 open-ended questions, and each question can range from 2, 3, 4 to 5 marks, and this is a total of 44 marks. Students are given 1 hour and 45 minutes to complete the paper, and time management is extremely important during the exam. Many times we find that students often struggle to complete the questions as they spend too much time in booklet A. So a suggested guide would be that students can spend about less than 45 minutes to do booklet A and about an hour for booklet B. For PSLE Science Foundation paper, it consists of 2 booklets as well, which pupil will take in one sitting too. So booklet A comprises 18 MCQ questions, 3 options are given, and each question is 2 marks, which is a total of 36 marks. For booklet B, it comprises 6 to 7 structured questions. Structured questions would be questions such as fill in the blanks or matching. And for open-ended questions, there are about 5 to 6 questions, and the total marks for booklet B is 34. So the total marks for the entire paper is 70 marks. Now, the duration is 1 hour 15 minutes, and for the foundation paper, a word list is provided so that students will not be disadvantaged due to the weaker command of the English language. But do take note that the list is not exhaustive. Okay, students will be required to use certain words on their own. Okay, I'll move on to some examples of PSLE questions. Okay, this question is a multiple choice question in the standard science paper. Students are required to state the energy conversion of the ball. So this is quite a simple, straightforward knowledge with understanding question. Okay, I'll move on to the next question. This is an open-ended question which assesses students' understanding of 2 topics, which are the water cycle as well as heat and temperature. So in PSLE, we find that there are now more questions with a combination of topics. So this is an example of such a question. So part A requires students to explain the formation of the mist, and students will need to apply their understanding of how the ice cools the surroundings around the truck and allow condensation to happen. Okay, and for part B, it is a knowledge with understanding question which requires students to state that the mist had evaporated into water vapor. Okay, and for part C, it is a recall question where students need to recall the property of plastic, and plastic being a poor conductor of heat will reduce the heat transfer from the surroundings to the ice, therefore preventing the ice from melting. Okay, so I'll move on to the next question. This is an MCQ question in the foundation science paper. So this is a knowledge with understanding question, which is pretty straightforward. Students are required to recall and identify the part of the flower which develops into a fruit after fertilization. Next, you will see this question, which is a structured question in booklet B. So students are supposed to identify the parts of the digestive system and just tick and circle the correct answers. Moving on, this is an example of the application and process skill question in booklet B. So students are required to analyze the diagram, look at the graph to infer that the temperature of the water in the setup with material A increases until it reaches a definite temperature. Okay, so over here, part B, this is an application question where students will have to support the answer with scientific reasoning to explain that heat is transferred slower to the handle, therefore the hands would not be burnt during cooking. Okay, now, RISE strategy is a strategy that teachers have taught to students from P3 to P6. So when answering questions, students must read the question carefully. They should also study diagrams, tables, and graphs if they are provided. And students will need to identify the topic and the concept tested. They also need to study all the options carefully and therefore use the elimination method to arrive at the best possible answer. Okay, right strategy is also used to help students answer open-ended questions. Students should read the question carefully to mark out keywords and look for clues to help them answer the question. If there are any diagrams, tables, or graphs, they should study it and compare the diagrams carefully. And next, they would have to identify the topic as well as the concept tested and to use relevant concepts to answer the questions. It is also important that students check the mark allocation and answer to the context of the question. All right. The problem with some students is that they tend to write a lot and they will add additional incorrect information. So do take note, for incorrect information, marks will be penalized. So they have to answer to the question context. Okay. Now, for open-ended question, these are some common words or phrases that students have seen in their questions. So for example, questions that has words such as state, identify, list, name, give an example. For such questions, students are required to give short and concise answers without having to give an explanation. For questions with the following terms like explain, infer, describe, conclude, give a reason, students will be required to provide more details in their answers. They need to include the scientific reasoning and make reference to science concepts. And they are strongly discouraged from giving 1 or 2 word answers. Here are some common observations that our teachers have made while marking the students' work. So students tend to have difficulties in identifying the concepts required to answer the questions. Their answers are also not clear, not comprehensive enough, often lacking in scientific reasoning. Students also tend to lift the answers from the question stem, so they just copy the question, the words in the question stem to form their answers. And also the students' answers are not relevant to the context of the question. Okay, now, how can parents better support your child in the learning of science at home? We can strengthen their conceptual understanding by supporting them to do the following. Help them develop a daily routine for revision and homework. It is important to also encourage your child to revise the topics from P3 to P6. And during the revision, students are to go through the topical worksheets, the exam practice papers, the activity books, as well as the textbooks. These are very rich resources which will help the students to do their revision properly. All right. Now, good study habits such as the use of mind maps or concept maps would help students organize the notes so that they can see the connection of key ideas and concepts across the different topics. And time management is very important, like what I mentioned earlier. So time practice is important. So it would be good for the students to practice doing the exam practice papers at home within the stipulated time. You can also develop your child's love for science by encouraging them to question things that they see around them. You know, talk to them about what they see in the park, what they see at home, and relate this to the science concepts that they have learned. Okay, and lastly, I would also want you to encourage your child to read books or magazines or any text materials that are related to science. Our National Library does have a good collection of these books. So it is good for you to bring your child to the library and then encourage them to borrow this book so that they can talk to you about what they have learned about science. Okay, and with that, I've come to the end of the presentation. Thank you. And for further queries, you may consult your science teacher or you can feel free to email me.